Awesome. Thank you. Again, this is amazing. Compared to last year, where, just the fill out in this auditorium is stupendous. I think we may have to consider hiring out the new camp next year. And possibly, you don't want to see me play football, though. Yeah, thank you all for coming. It's been absolutely great talking to a bunch of you, meeting you in person, older faces from last year. And yeah, this event just keeps on getting better and better, and hopefully next year is going to be even more stupendous, especially after last night and what we've got planned potentially tonight as well. So yeah, lovely to see this. What I want to talk to you about is how to set up automation on the Seqera platform. So before I do that, I just want to set up some audience participation here. Whenever I say tower, I want someone from the audience to correct me and say Seqera Platform. I know you're thinking it. I need to wipe out 2 years of muscle memory overnight, so I need your help. Some positive reinforcement might be good as well. Okay, so I head up the scientific development team at Seqera Labs, and we do various things. So we're typically bioinformaticians, but we're sort of Swiss Army knives in a way that we interact with various departments and do various things. And it's awesome that the team that we're building at Seqera to do various things, whether it's developing the product, the people team, the marketing, engineering. Everyone is just been awesome to work with, and we're quite a fluid team. We still are quite heavily vested in open source and community contributions, like Evan alluded to yesterday, and so we're still contributing quite a bit back to NF Core. Our primary goal also is to keep our customers happy and build relationships, and also to help them be successful in their environments. So just a brief overview of the Seqera platform. Some of the benefits Evan showed you yesterday. There's also a ton of other stuff like cloud expenses and various other things that really help to collaborate and run pipelines in a single environment. But as I said, I want to talk to you about the automation aspect. As bioinformaticians, we love automation, and it's something that is really important to me. It has been also with a lot of the stuff that I've helped implement on NF Core and various other places. If you can automate stuff, just do it. It makes your life so much easier. There are various use cases for automation. So UIs, wet lab scientists that may not necessarily know how to code, just want to click a few buttons and run a pipeline on something like Seqera Platform. APIs, if you've got existing databases and various other things that you've already integrated into your own infrastructure, and you may want to leverage an API to automate that process, that's another option for automation. CLIs, bioinformaticians tend to love CLIs because you install things on a command line, it's easy to test, it's easy to develop, and it's also easy to interact with. And so these are sort of the use cases that you typically have. But it's not necessarily one or the other, it's more of a continuum. So I, for example, may be incredibly lazy and want to use the UI just because it's convenient. I may also want to use the CLI to do the more mundane tasks that I have to do all of the time. And so there are various use cases for automation. As Evan showed you yesterday, you can obviously add a pipeline to Seqera Platform and run it via user interface by clicking on a few buttons. So that's just simply a UI type launching. Via an API, so Seqera Platform, I haven't said tower yet. So on the Seqera Platform, what we have is an API, and so it's essentially composed of 3 components. You need to understand the basics to get how all of this messaging and communication happens in automation. And so what we have at the back end of Seqera Platform is a database. Now that database holds all of the information that you see when you open up the user interface on a website. It holds all of that information in a database. So that can then be accessed via API calls. which is one layer of automation. And so here you can see there's sort of a Python way of posting a request via an API call. It's not my favorite thing, but it works, where you need to integrate API calls into existing systems and that sort of stuff. And hopefully this is just mostly to show you the flexibility that you have on offer. That API then speaks to the front end. So you've got a database at the back end, you've got a back end container that is making all of these API calls and speaking to the user interface. So whenever you see a pipeline running in Tower or other various metrics, that's all happening via API calls behind the scenes. We've made that open, so you can leverage that for your own automation. But what we've also built on top of that is the Seqera CLI. And so the Seqera CLI behind the scenes is also making API calls, but it's doing it in a very nice user-friendly way. And so there may be instances where you want to launch a pipeline via the command line. And it is behind the scenes, it's chaining together multiple API calls, so you don't have to. And so it's a convenience function that just makes it a lot easier for you to interact with the Seqera platform. Another nice thing about it is that what you can do is you can import and export entities in Tower. So everything that you create in Tower, when you click a button and say add, everything you say in Seqera Platform, when you create an entity, is essentially just a bit of code behind the scenes, right? And so what you can do is you can import and export that out of the Seqera Platform and store it as code. This is also nice because you've essentially now got infrastructure as code. Everything that you've done and created in the Seqera Platform is stored as code. You can version control that, and you can update it, and you have better provenance as to exactly what you've done and how. To take it a step further now, what we've built as a team, right? So it's a bit of a cascading thing. So you've got the API, the CLI is built on top of the CLI, and us as a team have built Seqera Kit, which is built on top of the CLI. And so essentially what Seqera Kit is, it's an interface to the command line. And so all of the options you typically would see when you run the command line are exposed in a standard YAML format that you can then specify to create virtually anything on the Seqera platform, as I'm about to show you. You can also now, because this package has been written in Python, you can import Seqera Kit and hence the CLI functionality directly into Python for you to leverage your own automation. And so now this is opening up the ability to automate your internal processes via Python, which I think is going to be very powerful. There's tons of stuff that you may want to do dynamically via scripting that you can now do and don't necessarily need to do it via user interface or via an API. So I'm gonna show you, give you a live demo. You only live once. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about it right now, but the fire exit's that way, by the way. Okay, so what I've done is essentially I've installed the Seqera CLI locally. I've just created an alias. This still needs to be, we haven't rebranded it yet. We're in the process of doing that. We're going to do it this quarter. But I've just created a local alias that essentially aliases the TW option to Seqera. And it has a number of options, right? So it's a CLI, so you can do virtually, as I said, virtually anything that you want to interact with on Tower, you can do via the command line interface. Thank you. Right, so that's the CLI. Now, what I want to show you is there are ways that you can essentially abstract away things like workspace names, organization names, users, and everything, and create a standardized format to define a set of variables. So these are the things that you most likely will be changing whenever you create a new organization in Tower, a new workspace, or launch a new pipeline. There are some things that you need to change all of the time. Other things remain constant. And so the way that we've developed Seqera Kit is that you can specify just standard environment variables. You can, in this case, I'm going to source some secrets here as well. I don't want to air my dirty laundry here on stage. And so these are in a file, and they're things like AWS permissions and various other stuff. So all I really have to do is source this single file. And all of these variables are now, or should be available to me in the executing environment there. What I now want to do is take a YAML that defines everything that I want to create in the Seqera platform, all the way from an organization, from scratch, adding teams, workspaces, participants, credentials for all of these different, in this case, it will be for AWS Batch, adding a compute environment and utilizing the batch forge mechanism that we've got on Tower that will essentially go and spin up everything that you need to do without you even needing to touch the AWS console. Using Fargate in this case as well to spin up these instances very fast. Big thanks to the engineering team who released the CLI with this functionality for us this week as well. It's going to be really useful to show that. And then once you've got the compute in the Seqera platform, you then want to add your pipeline and run it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run Seqera Kit, which I've got installed here. Just check it is. Oops. Did I spell it wrong? There we go. So it's installed there. So now all I have to do is provide this YAML to Seqera Kit. What it will do is it will work its way through that, and it will go and create everything in the platform for me. And so you can imagine this YAML file being a source of essentially infrastructure as code that you can maintain. You get a bit of dynamic, the dynamic aspects by using environment variables. So things that you want to change, you can encode in a different way. At this point now, what's happening is Seqera Kit is going in and it's creating the AWS compute environment for me in the workspace. Let's go and have a look at what that looks like. I'm just going to log in. So here's the brand new organization that I've just created from the command line. I've also added Adam and Isha. I'm going to give them higher roles, so if anything breaks, I can blame them. And then if we go into this workspace here, this compute environment is now available. The pipeline hello world is just being added. So if I refresh this page again, the hello world pipeline's been added, and it's also been executed on AWS Batch, all within one flow. What I want to do is take it a bit further now and also replicate what Evan done via the user interface yesterday. So what he done was used this fetch NGS pipeline with a set of IDs from a study that he found on the SRA. I'm going to use the latest version of fetch NGS, which comes with all of the NF test magic that we implemented at the hackathon just to top it off. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run a separate, smaller YAML that just literally just adds a data set. And in this case, that data set is just a few IDs, database IDs. It will add the data set for me as well as the pipeline directly into the user interface. So again, all I need to do is that. If I refresh, I've now got the fetch NGS pipeline here. I've got that data set. I can now launch this pipeline. So this would be like a UI type launch. So let me just rename this. I'll provide as input to the data set that I just added. So this would be how you would launch this pipeline from the user interface. Oops. Give me permissions. Okay, so because I've just created this organization from scratch, that's probably why I've got these restrictions on here. there's nothing really I can do about that now. But hopefully it highlighted to you by pushing up these assets directly to the Seqera platform, it just makes it a lot easier for you to manage and maintain this overall. And so what I can do is I just attempted to show you how to launch it via the UI. Normally it would work when you create the organization and you've been given the appropriate permissions. What I also want to show you is essentially doing the same thing via a Python script. So here, all I'm doing is specifying the workspace that I want to run, the dataset name, the one that we just added into the user interface. This is just going in and fetching the dataset ID directly from the Seqera platform. I'm creating a temporary parameter file for these parameters within Python, and then launching this pipeline. So this is most likely not going to work either because of the workflow limit, but I just want to show you what it looks like. Oh, you did? Beautiful, thank you. There we go. Such a great team. Right, so here now, what we should see is we've just launched the same pipeline from Python. I'm gonna go and launch it now just to complete the circle via the user interface. Right, so hopefully this shows you that you can automate your processes via a native CLI. You can have YAML, infrastructure as code. You can even have Python. This entire end-to-end process in terms of going from nothing to running a pipeline and having everything you need from credentials, users, a potentially complex compute environment in the cloud, adding a pipeline, running that pipeline. I think it's probably taken about 2 minutes for me to do that end-to-end. If I were to share this, maintain it, and I want to spin up additional workspaces in the future, it just makes it a lot easier to do that. So to highlight that, what my lovely volunteers in the front have done is as soon as I've created this organization, they've created workspaces and have triggered exactly the same things on Azure as well as GCP. So these pipelines are now running on multiple clouds within the space of about 10 minutes. So that's really the big advantage of this, and I hope it's useful for you to see exactly what benefits you can get from this sort of thing in terms of having infrastructure as code. You can push this up to GitHub. Anyone can run it, and it sets up everything you need directly within the Seqera platform. Thank you for listening, and I hope that was useful.
Good thing we have some time for questions, because there's a lot of questions. So first of all, you mentioned GitHub. Would any of the examples that you showed right now be available on GitHub?
Absolutely, yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. So on the Seqera Kit website, what we're trying to do is, what we've done essentially is we've added a bunch of templates here for you to start adding your own YAML files with some documentation. This is likely to change depending on what happens in the CLI, but we'll try and keep on top of that. It's in beta form, but please come and use it, break it, give us your opinions. We want to improve it. We use it every day. If you find any benefit in using it, then we'd also be great to hear your feedback on how it's working for you. We've also got some end-to-end examples here where the Python script that I just showed you, this is just a simple hello world example of that you can use and build out your own processes, as well as a YAML that shows the entire end-to-end process. And actually, Ish has also created a pull request that adds these templates that we've run for you today via pull request into this public repository, so they'll be accessible for you to go and browse and play around with.
Another question from Geraldine. Could you use this to set up GitHub Actions to automatically launch a pipeline after, for example, committing some changes or releasing a new version?
Absolutely. So because it's in version control, it's in a GitHub repository, we can set the GitHub action to do virtually what we want. And in fact, we've got a workflow here that runs the end-to-end testing workflow YAML file that I just showed you. It's, again, injecting all of these environment variables that we need to change that might be variable. It's injecting all of these into the environment, and it's creating everything for us. So we can absolutely use it as part of CI/CD, and we have been doing that. It's great. The plan is potentially in the future also to maybe roll this out on NF Core, because we're using Tower for a lot of, we're using Seqera Platform for a lot of our CI/CD on NF Core as well, because it's just a lot easier to create, these cloud resources very easily. And in the future, the plan is to have these simple sort of templates that we can use with NF Core at some point. So hopefully it'll be there soon.
Another question came from Stav. Can you do environment variable substitution on the YAML with Seqera Kit?
Yeah, so if I understand that correctly, if we look at this, this YAML that I've just used, the organization name is actually exported into the environment there, which is in this case Seqera Kit. So if we do echo organization name, it's Seqera Kit. When you run Seqera Kit, what it does is it scrapes your local environment for all of the environment variables that you've put into there, and it will use them and substitute them wherever it needs to within this YAML. And so in that way, you can do other things. You can have a time variable that is just bash returning the current timestamp when you're running this pipeline, and you can even substitute time variables to have dynamic parameter naming for your output directories and various other stuff as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Another question from Raul. Is it possible to access Tower Forge functionality through API calls so that one could have code to define one's compute environment?
Yeah, you should be able to create compute environments via API calls as well. So anything that I'm showing you now that I'm able to do via Seqera Kit, you can do via the command line interface. Anything that you can do via the command line interface, you can do via the API. And so it just bubbles down in terms of functionality.
And there was another question. Can you take use the Seqera Kit to take down the infrastructure after pipeline is complete, so you don't end up with compute environments from previous test runs?
So that's an excellent question, and actually Isha has just recently added a delete functionality to this. So where is it? It's here. Here we go. So yes.
Perfect. I think that's it we have for questions for now.
Awesome. So yeah, I'd just like to thank Isha, who's mostly been working on this. So take a bow, my wonderful volunteers. And everyone at Seqera, yeah, it's just been awesome. I know that I'm not going to name drop everyone, but this just wasn't our work. Everyone was involved, engineering. Again, other people within the company were involved to get this over the line. So yeah, thank you all again for the effort you put into this.